Moving on now to our debate number 2. It's been more than a week since Justin Trudeau alleged Indian involvement in the killing of a global terrorist, Hardeep Nijjar. From credible allegations to credible reasons to credible proof, the Canadian government has doubled down on its effort to back their claims over the murder of Hardeep Nijjar, who is no ordinary Canadian citizen, but a man the NI describes as a global terrorist. However, it appears Justin Trudeau is either unable or is reluctant to rein in the pro-Khalistan forces. Today, protests were held outside Indian diplomatic missions in Ottawa, Toronto and Vancouver. The Indian tricolor was desecrated, posters of Prime Minister Modi were torn. These pro-Khalistan groups are literally running riot in Canada. So much so that it's now starting to affect Canada's reputation on the global stage, if it hasn't already. Today, the Sri Lankan government went on to repeat India's claims that global terrorists are finding a safe haven in Canada. Bangladesh says India is not the only one. In fact, we have also leveled several serious allegations against Canada in the past. And in fact, India is acting mature. Canada is acting and handling the situation very immaturely. The US, UK and other global powers have already made it clear that they are not taking sides on the issue. So the question many are asking today is, has Trudeau jumped the gun?
Yeah, we have always suffered, and some of the terrorists have found safe haven in Canada. Canadian Prime Minister has this way of just coming out with some outrageous allegations without any supporting proof. The same thing they did for Sri Lanka, a terrible, total lie about saying that Sri Lanka had a genocide. Everybody knows there was no genocide in our country. And I saw yesterday he had gone and given a rousing welcome to somebody who have associated with the Nazis in the past on the Second World War. So I'm not surprised that sometime Prime Minister Trudeau comes out with outrageous, unsubstantiated allegations.
We believe, we are very proud of India because they don't do immature things. We have a very solid relationship with India, and these are based on values and principles. So this is a sad episode. I hope this should end up amicably.
But India has made its stand clear time and again. We are ready to cooperate with the Canadian government should they provide any sort of proof. But what about the proof that India has provided Canada? India has sought the deportation of dangerous global terrorists including Goldie Barar, Arshadullah and Lakhbir Singh Sandhu among others. Some of these people have been hiding in Canada for years. India has made it clear we won't provide the long rope to nations that give a free run to extremist elements. In his address at the United Nations, in fact, the External Affairs Minister says nations must refrain from allowing political conveniences to determine response to terror.
Mr. President, we must never again allow an injustice like vaccine apartheid to recur. Climate action cannot continue to witness an evasion of historical responsibilities. The power of markets should not be utilized to steer food and energy from the needy to the wealthy. Nor must we countenance that political convenience determines responses to terrorism, extremism, and violence. Similarly, respect for territorial integrity and non-interference in internal affairs cannot be exercises in cherry-picking. When reality departs from the rhetoric, we must have the courage to call it out.
You're watching the News Hour at 10. Debate number 2 on Times Now, Super Prime Time.
So while Canada has still not provided any proof, no evidence in public domain to back its allegations that it called were credible, there is proof out on the streets of Canada of how the terror elements, of how the pro-Khalistan groups are on a rampage and running an anti-India propaganda, all of which is being allowed in the name of freedom of speech and expression. Let's in fact go across to Michael Bosecue, Global Affairs Analyst and Senior Fellow Atlantic Council, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Is it a mix of dipping popularity, vote bank politics, pressure from allies who are supporting Justin Trudeau, and pressure of patronage to the K elements, to the Khalistani elements that in fact forced Justin Trudeau to pull off what many are calling is a stunt of leveling serious allegations against India without so far putting out any proof in public domain?
It's a bit difficult to hear your question, but let me try answering what I worked out here. So, look, there are a couple of points I'd like to make. Number one, the investigation from the Canadian side is still ongoing. They've asked for cooperation from the Indian side. I don't know how much is being given. That's number one. Number two, the argument that Mr. Trudeau and his government is making for allowing these elements to speak out and so on is freedom of expression. It's granted to every Canadian landed immigrant and so on. So it's a very, very big cornerstone of our, Charter of Rights and Freedoms in Canada. The important point to make here, Madam, is that when that line is crossed, for example, hate speech, hate crimes, defamation of monuments, of buildings, that sort of thing, that's when the authorities should act and need to act. I can tell you that since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, there have been concerns raised by the Ukrainian community that their pleas for authorities to act on certain alleged hate crimes haven't been acted upon. So we're all hoping, of course, that that's something the government can tighten up, the authorities can tighten up to protect Canadians from that type of abuse.
What is the sentiment on ground? How are Canadians looking at this entire issue, which in fact dates back to the 80s, I believe 45 years back? That's when the origin of this issue is being traced. And ever since then, Canada has only been turning into a safe haven. India has requested and in fact provided proof against several terrorists who support the Khalistani cause. Not much was done by the Canadian establishment.
Right. Again, the audio is very bad, but I'll try to answer. I think Canadians are still absorbing this. We're a society where oftentimes the government is given the benefit of the doubt, especially when such serious allegations are raised. I think that another factor to consider is that Canada has very widely opened its doors to the world in terms of immigration. So it's almost inevitable that disagreements or conflicts or whatever from a certain part of the world comes along with some of them to Canada. In fact, last summer we had quite a heated incident in a park in Toronto where two kind of rival Eritrean groups got into quite a bit of violence and the police had to intervene. So look, the other thing I think Canadians are also thinking and saying is that it is hard to believe that the Trudeau government, because it has, quite frankly, fumbled a lot of foreign affairs files, it is very difficult to imagine that they would act without solid evidence. And I think it is incumbent upon the Indian government to cooperate, and I believe they are. But the other thing has to be said, with all due respect to authorities over there where you are, is that I would think that they would bend over backwards to provide evidence to clear his name, because India, as you well know, is on the ascendancy. It's the most populous country in the world, and hence it has to show beyond a doubt that it's acting as a country that subscribes to the rules-based international order.
All right. I am also joined by V Pant, Vice President, Studies and Foreign Policy. Mr. Pant, is this a Canada problem? Is this a law and order problem? Is this a situation created by Canada by going soft on the K elements, on the pro-Khalistani groups?
Well, I think it's more or less, it seems at the moment, a Trudeau problem. Because I think what we are going to see increasingly is that India framing it, and India is already saying this, that this is largely, of course, Canadian government as a whole is responsible, and the way this issue has been treated, the way this entire episode has been dealt with, is slightly problematic from the point of view, basically, of a country that was looking at Canada as a partner country. We were doing, India for a very long time had been telling the Canadian government that, look, these are the individuals, these are the problems, please do something about it. And I think when today Mr. Trudeau asks for cooperation, he should remember that for a long time, India was asking for cooperation and we never got any. So now we have, and despite that, India tried to keep these things in abeyance and was working silently in mending fences. Prime Minister Modi visited Canada. The trade deal was being talked about. So we were gradually moving to a place where, despite this problem, India and Canada were seemed ready to do business with each other. I think with one stroke, Mr. Trudeau has decimated all of that. And now I'm afraid the mindset, that the challenge is going to be that until such time as Mr. Trudeau is in office, will there be enough trust between New Delhi and Canada to take positive initiatives forward? And I think it's a loss for both countries, because both of us would have benefited if this problem would have been dealt with from the very beginning. And I would also add that now that Mr. Trudeau has let this can out of the bag, I think we are going to see increasingly India putting the spotlight back on Canada itself. Right. That, look, there is a long history of Canada not dealing with extremism and terrorism seriously.
Right. If Canada would have acted in time, probably we would not have seen such escalation. Mr. Bossaque, what are your views? Today, the External Affairs Minister of India, while addressing the UNGA, said, political convenience should not come in the way as to how a country responds to terrorism. Do you think we've called out the political convenience?
I think the hope in Ottawa is, and probably in Delhi as well, is that this probably needs a bit of a cooling off period. Both sides need to back off of each other a bit, and hopefully the relationship can get restarted. Because I think every Canadian realizes how important our bilateral relationship is with India. The other kind of report is circulating, and I hate to get into speculation, but there were reports that there was a leak of this intelligence and that the government moved quickly, because otherwise a certain Canadian newspaper might have come out with this information about this alleged assassination. So perhaps the government's hand was forced there. If I may make one more point, I think this is really important, because the other speaker alluded to this, and also in your previous report, it talked about sovereignty and things like this. I think the other thing India might consider doing is taking a more firm stance on the war in Ukraine. India is a country, if anybody should understand about sovereignty and territorial integrity, I think it would be really a great step on their part to perhaps come out with a bit more support for Ukraine concerning what's happened there, territory taken away. And that would also, I think, boost India's image in the world, especially with Western allies.
Okay, we also have Ramesh Sangha, former MP Canada, joining us on the broadcast. Thank you very much for giving us your time. You're somebody who had to actually bear the brunt for speaking the truth, for talking about patronage to the Khalistani elements in Canada, isn't it, Mr. Sangha? And what do you have to say about today's situation?
Today's situation is really unfortunate. It's some sort of allegation which is really, it is surprising to everyone. It's Canadians, they are very much and that how come it can happen onto the Canadian soil, and it's really unfortunate for both the countries, especially for the general public here in Canada.
But do you think the real problem lies in inaction, the government in fact promoting this extremism under the garb of freedom of speech and expression in Canada?
No, I was thinking in that way earlier, but now I feel, but there is some problem is there. So we have to tackle it in a way that first of all, we have to agree that is there really some problem is there or not? But that's what Canadians are thinking. Now, earlier they were thinking why it should be by Mr. Trudeau and suddenly coming a provoking statement, and why it should be into the parliament. But now people are thinking in a different way. If some involvement is there in which India is involved, it is really unfortunate. I don't know yet.
But there is no credible evidence so far in the public domain, or nothing of that sort has been shared with India. Mr. Ramesh Sangha, like I said, you had to bear the brunt for speaking the truth. Now the question here is, Is this only a big stunt that has been pulled off, like many, in fact, are analyzing it to be? If there is a credible evidence, why not put it out in the public domain? Why not share it with the country against whom you are leveling these allegations?
Yes, but at the same time, these investigations, when is going on, it has to be something. Oh my! It has to be, that allegations are in such a way that these are still to be proved. So when the proof comes in front, that when it will come, because it's under investigation. So we are looking, whole Canada is looking for.
Yes, the investigation is still underway, but tall claims were made. Ms. Sangha, before I let you go and wrap up quickly, if you can also, talk about the case situation, the Khalistani situation in Canada and how influential this lobby is.
Oh, they are very 1% people in Canada and all over in the world. They are 1% of the Sikh population. So they are, other Sikhs are not the Khalistanis. These are the people, those who are talking all from long time in such a way that people don't like these things. People don't like their statement. People don't like their activities here in Canada.
People don't like their statements. People don't like their stand. And we've seen what is happening on the streets of Canada, yet the establishment allows all of that to happen in the name of freedom of speech and expression is really unfortunate. Now, everybody's waiting to know, what that credible proof is. Will that be shared with India? Will that be put in the public domain after allegations were leveled? Thank you very much, Harsh V Pant and Ramesh Sangha, for joining us. Thank you to Michael Bosseque as well for joining us on the broadcast with your perspective. Gentlemen, thank you for giving us your time. With that, wrapping up debate number 2.